What's going on, everybody? Good late morning. And before we get into the draft prospect talk, because today's going to be a pretty short day for draft prospect stuff, I only have two videos, and they're going to be day three tight ends, so it's not going to be the most compelling day of draft prospect discussion. So I'm going to save those videos for the afternoon. Real quick, before I get into the main meat of this video, one thing I want to say is that the stream with the Hawk's Nest has been pushed back to tomorrow. So it's going to be Friday at noon, not Thursday at noon like we usually do. So keep an eye out for that. That stream should already be posted, but it's not going to start in an hour. It's going to start in 25 hours, I guess. So, yeah, just something to keep in mind. No issue, just had a little bit of a scheduling thing, so we bumped it a day. Okay, so I wanted to go over some numbers here in this video because after the Seahawks signed Cooper Kupp, I think most people were pretty excited about it. I think most people were pretty happy about it. There was a little bit of concern from some people, and I want to go ahead and address that now. The concern had to do with how these pieces were going to fit in this Clint Kubiak offense. So obviously we're aware of the fact that Clint Kubiak has, generally speaking, not been a big fan of going wide receiver heavy in his offenses. He is near the league lead. Last year, he was near the league lead in utilizing tight ends and backs, and near the bottom in terms of utilizing receivers. Now, some of that was because his receivers kept getting hurt, but he also showed a little bit of a propensity to want to go light on receivers and heavy on tight ends and backs at his other stops. I think Minnesota was another one. And that short period of time he was the play caller for Denver, it wasn't extreme, but it was notable. They were going three receiver sets, I think, at about an average pace over those games that he was the play caller in Denver, which was interesting because during that period of time, Denver was one of the worst teams in the league, and they were frequently playing from behind. So they were kind of heavily incentivized to go three receiver, and they still didn't do it that much. So, with that being said, after we signed Cooper Kupp, people wondered, well, if we're going to be running an offense that doesn't go wide receiver heavy, if we're going to be going heavy on tight ends and backs, how does Cooper Kupp fit in, especially with JSN in the picture? And that kind of gets to what I want to talk about a little bit in this video. This idea that JSN and Cooper Kupp don't really slot well together because they're too similar. And what that really means is that there's a concern that JSN and Cooper Kupp are both slot receivers, and this is a team that seems to be trying to move away from having the slot receiver on the field a high percentage of the time. There are ways to go slot with less than three receivers on the field, but most frequently, a slot receiver is only on the field when there are three or more receivers out there. Two receiver sets require two guys that are typically outside receivers. So already you have a little bit of a problem just with JSN. But does Cooper Kupp kind of have a diminishing return problem here? How are JSN and Cooper Kupp going to share snaps? I wanted to talk about that a little bit in this video. And what I want to get to here, really, is just kind of addressing the allegation that Kupp and JSN are both slot-only guys. Now, for JSN, I think the claim is mostly true. And what I've done in this chart, which I'm sure you've already seen if you've been looking at the screen at all, is I've taken the percentage of the player's snaps that have come in various spots. Wide, which is along the boundary, or in the slot. And for JSN, his rookie year, he played about 68% of his snaps in the slot and about 32% as a wideout. So that's actually a pretty normal spread, but that was his rookie year. That was with Waldron. That was with a team that wasn't going super three receiver heavy. 2024, when the team went three receiver heavy, you can see that JSN barely played on the outside at all. 21, not even 22% of his snaps were as a wide receiver. close to 78% of his snaps were in the slot. So he basically became a full-time slot player, and he had his best year by far. Not that that means a lot because he's only played 2 years, but he had a very good year. Clearly, JSN is a player you want playing in the slot. That is where he gets most of his production. And while I don't think there's ever going to be a player that plays 100% of their snaps in the slot, JSN is certainly one of the guys you want playing most of his snaps in the slot. That's not necessarily the case for Cooper Kupp. So, Cooper Kupp's played 8 years in the NFL. So, if we take a look at the percentages, and by the way, these percentages were taken from Pro Football Focus, so I believe they are correct. And if they're not correct, they're probably off by a couple, and it's not going to significantly change the data sample. So, as you can see, every single year of Cooper Kupp's career, he's played more wide than JSN ever has. His lowest percentage of playing as a wide receiver, that is aligned on the boundary, was 2018, which was still slightly higher as a percentage than JSN in 2023. Every other year than that, like I guess 2019 was pretty low as well. 2021 was kind of low. 2023 was low. But every other year, it was significantly more. So, you've got years here, like 2022. And 2022 was a year where Kupp only played about half the season before he got hurt. But he played about half of his snaps as a wide receiver and half as a slot receiver. Even these last couple of years, where he's mostly been a slot, that's obviously true, 62.5%, 66%, he still is giving you a non-trivial portion of his snaps, like more than a third, as an outside receiver. And other than those 2 years early in his career, and honestly, I wouldn't even look at the stuff early in his career that much at this point, he's a guy who lines up on the outside at least a third of the time. He has 3 seasons where he lined up on the outside as a wide receiver, 40% or more. Now, this is on the Rams. This is on a team that pretty much always has a slot receiver on the field. This is a team that lives in 3 wide. This is a team where they have pretty much always had a need for a slot receiver. So the opportunity is constantly there, and there's always this motivation to put him in that slot. Now you're taking him to another team where that opportunity may not be there, but you have clearly seen, just looking at this data, even if you only look at the last few years, even if you decide the early year stuff doesn't matter that much because it's too long ago, he clearly has the ability to play effectively from wide. So I'm not really worried about this at all. JSN is the guy who has clearly shown he's meant to be in the slot as much as humanly possible. That's not the case with Kupp. Kupp can play wherever he needs to play. It is easier to play in the slot, so it does make sense that the Rams would want to put him there as much as possible because it gives him the best opportunities to make plays, but that's not for lack of ability to play on the outside. And even this most recent season, where in theory age should be affecting him the most, he was still giving you about 37% of his snaps as an outside receiver. So when I look at this, I see a player who is capable of performing inside or outside. So I don't think Kupp's going to have an issue fitting in here. That is not my concern. There are other concerns, for sure, but we'll visit those in the coming days. I just wanted to talk about this element of it so people understand that Cooper Kupp is not just a slot guy. All right, see you guys later. Go Hawks. More videos later this afternoon.